ASEAN Daily. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene and you're listening to Durian ASEAN's ASEAN Daily, where we bring news from Southeast Asia and beyond. Today we start off with some updates regarding on the Taiwan plane crash, which was famously being caught on video by people who were driving on their roads. They have videos on their video camera on their dashboards, and apparently according to the latest updates, if you saw the video, the plane crashed into the river, and apparently the Trans-Asia Airway flight, shortly after takeoff, it dropped into the river, and until now, what we found out is the death toll has risen up to 26 people, and dozen more were still missing. According to a news today from the USA Today, it seems that the rescue team in Taiwan are continuing with the somber search for survivors and bodies after the spectacular crash of the Trans-Airway Asia, and the dramatic video that was being caught by many drivers on the road. And right now, at least 15 survivors, and the plane clips its left wing on the bridge shortly after taking off from the capital of Taipei and crashed into a nearby Keelung River. 17 people still remain missing, or they were feared dead. Taiwanese rescuer used a massive crane to hoist the French-built ATR 72-600 plane from the shallow, murky river after survivors were brought to safety on rubber rafts and scrambled to the river bank on their own. One injured person was reportedly found in a park along the river. Wu Jun-hong, a Taipei Fire Department official coordinating the rescue, said he was not too optimistic that more survivors would be found. This is a very ironic sort of crash, never been seen before, especially on footage. It's quite surreal if you look at the videos that were being captured by many of the drivers along the road when the plane passed by the highway and crashed into the river. And according to Taiwan's Liberty Times newspaper, one of the online comments thanking and praising the pilot's action, although aviation authorities could not immediately confirm such an effort took place. The fate of pilot Liao Jianzhong, who reported has nearly 5,000 hours of flying experience, was not immediately known. And what is being seen here is, as far as I can see, the bigger picture here is the aviation industry is getting worse and worse in terms of its track record of being one of the safest transportation. It seems like just since last year until now, more and more high-profile flight crashes has been reported on the news, and I fear the worst, that people will start fearing using aviation as the mode of transportation. Another update on another side of the world, in the Middle East, regarding on ISIS, war on ISIS. So Jordan is pledging to fight militants on the ground. It's a coup for US and its allies. As you all know, just yesterday, Jordan has executed one of the female detainees in its prison, believed to be part of ISIS, in return for the killing of a Jordanian pilot. It was quite brutal. He was burned alive, and the video was being aired by ISIS. And what it seems like hours after the pilot was seen being burned alive, and impassioned and angry King Abdullah told members of the US Congress that Jordan would be stepping up airstrikes against ISIS. The only problem we are going to have, Jordan is going to have, is running out of fuel and bullets. Around the same time on Tuesday, US officials were forced to admit that the UAE, a crucial ally, has dropped out of the mission. The full ramifications of recent shocking events, the burning alive of Flight Lieutenant Muath al-Kasisbeh, and the grim retribution taken by Jordan by hanging two of the Iraqis convicted of terrorism. One of it is a woman, of course, and what happened has become for many in the Middle East and beyond a reason to take stock on war on ISIS. But it also seems like it's a kind of an eye for an eye sort of retribution. I'm not sure how this will end well with both parties, but it's definitely fueling another Middle Eastern war towards ISIS, which is gaining momentum in both Syria and Iraq. And it is, of course, essential that the US and the West keep its regional coalition together. This is not just because airstrikes must, for diplomatic reasons, include Sunni states as well as Western ones, but what must follow if ISIS and its allies are to be defeated? A land campaign. The training camp for moderate rebels are being set up in Jordan, Turkey and Saudi Arabia in tandem with similar facilities for the Peshmerga and Iraqi forces in Kurdistan and Iraq. So it seems like the side of the Iraqi government are gaining full momentum in ensuring that there will be an outburst of war towards ISIS. While another counterpart of the US, Australia, as well as a relatively small number of British special forces are also on the ground, although their role has been mainly confined to surveillance and calling down airstrikes. Some has reported being involved in setting up ambushes on insurgent convoys carrying high-value targets. While John Kerry, U.S. Secretary of State, claimed recently that more than 50% of ISIS leadership had been eliminated, the level of attritions cannot be done by air raids alone. However, taking and holding ground from ISIS would mean that involvement of regular forces. Would this be another huge war since the Iraq War that was struck by J.W. Bush in the early 2000s? It seems so. It seems like this is an even greater threat than the past Al-Qaeda, because there's an extremist ideology involved, which would be the forming of an Islamic State. And a lot of the Muslims around the world are quite torn on how to react to this. For example, in Malaysia alone, there are around 70 people joining ISIS, believing that it is fighting for a cause for Islam, while even the government has been quite the government in majority of the Muslim countries has been quite uncertain on how to react to this until what is happening right now. Seems like a lot of the countries in Muslim nations are definitely angry that ISIS has become so radical that it doesn't really care about humanity. And General Martin Dempsey, the head of the U.S. military and other Western commanders, has been repeatedly acknowledged that a counter-insurgents campaign cannot be won by airstrikes alone. Definitely, as what being seen before with Al-Qaeda and even the father of Bush, George Bush, it requires greater amount of strategy input, not just by military input alone. And fighters on the ground must be Iraqi and Syrian and not American and European. That's probably another strategy. in focus, and commanders also acknowledged that it will take far longer to train these forces than initially envisaged. The Syrian border town of Kobani has been recaptured from ISIS by Kurdish fighters, but it took months despite the intense airstrikes. The taking of Kobani definitely was a symbol and morale boost for the victory and disparaged group that were trying to fight against ISIS. But ISIS and its allies seized more territories in Homs, Raqqa, Idlib province and Aleppo hinterland, mainly from other rebel groups. So that means ISIS is still very much in control of major towns and cities within the area of Syria and Iraq. So what it seems like talks has been going on between all parties. Hopefully that Jordan would not be too hot-blooded and start killing people unnecessarily. I think what governments should do is not to follow the footsteps of ISIS, which is all about killing and retribution. I think it should be about trying to address the bigger picture on how to contain radical Islam or radical thinking among people who are so attracted to the idea that is being propagated by ISIS. We'll take a short break. When we return, we have more news from Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene. We are back again with more news from Southeast Asia. To continue with discussion regarding on ISIS. So, in ASEAN countries, it is actually monitoring the ISIS threat. This is being said by Hishamuddin. ISIS has become a real threat globally, especially to Southeast Asia, where we have hundreds of people from the Malay world, especially the Malay archipelago world, joining ISIS, believing that it's fighting for a cause for Islam. So ASEAN countries are keeping a closer watch on the Islamic State, and it seems as a very serious threat to the peace and security of this region. According to Hishamuddin, as I mentioned earlier, he's the defense minister, Datuk Sri Hishamuddin Tun Hussein. He said that this was because the ISIS militants were not selective, and any country could be exposed to their acts of terrorism and brutality. The threat is far more serious than the political and racial polemic considerations. And also, when asked to comment on the video recording said to be showing a captured Jordanian pilot believing to be burned alive by ISIS militant, his plane has crashed having his plane crash in Syria last December. When asked on Malaysia preparedness, in facing the ISIS militant threat, Hishamuddin said besides preparedness in terms of assets, Malaysian security forces, include the Royal Malaysian Police, were beefing up intelligence following the latest incidents of the killing of captives by ISIS militants. The influence in Malaysia is still under control. This is what being said by Hishamuddin, by the way. And they are committed to safeguarding the country's sovereignty and ensuring security, especially in Sabah, with measures that he has announced before, like bringing Hawk fighter jets to Labuan and upgrading the RMAF A base there. But what is important for the people of Sabah is to understand that terrorism or militancy is a security threat which must not be taken lightly, that they should not be influenced by the ISIS propaganda and to cooperate closely with the authorities. When he was asked by journalists whether the recent clash between the Moro Islamic Liberation Front rebels and the Philippine police, which resulted in the killing of 44 Filipino commandos how it would have impact Malaysia. He said that the country's defense forces were prepared for any eventuality. There is no place for militancy in Malaysia, thank goodness, and what is important is people's full cooperation and support regarding on their race and religion in thwarting such threats. It was reported that Philippines media that in the clash on January 25, Zulkifli Hir or Marwan, which is a Malaysian bomb maker and also a terrorist, apparently he's an expert in making bombs, was killed in a clash where about 50 police commandos also perished at the same time. Actually, it's 44 and 12 were injured. It was quite a bloodbath. And Malaysian government, from what it seems to be quite optimistic on the ISIS on the ISIS containment, but at the same time, if you look at how Malaysian people are still very much unsure whether ISIS is something they should support or not, and a lot of Malaysians considering 70 people is still quite a number of people, volunteering themselves to go to ISIS, and the number could actually be more since a lot of people go there undercover and they go there through Indonesia. At the same time, we can't help but to see people selling T-shirts, propagating the relevance of ISIS in certain areas, especially in areas that are religious and populated with Malay Muslim. It shows that people are still very much not against ISIS, but at the same time they are still unsure what kind of support they should give to ISIS, or whether ISIS and Islam is relevant to each other. Perhaps this is another research and also focus that the Malaysian government should do, besides focusing on the militancy part of addressing the peace and security of this country in Malaysia and also in Southeast Asia. Another news regarding on Malaysia. So Malaysia has passed critical first test as ASEAN chair. That sounds quite promising. Malaysia is keenly aware of the heavy responsibility coming with holding the ASEAN chair. It understands that every speech and pronouncement by the Malaysian leadership will be closely watched and analysed. The scrutiny is perhaps most intense in its management of the South China Sea dispute. Malaysia passed its first test commendably at the ASEAN Foreign Ministers Retreat in Kota Kinabalu, which ended on January 28. Before it became the ASEAN chair last November, Malaysia faced questions about its impartiality, given its close relations with China. Would Malaysia succumb to China's charm and allure its economic benefit? I guess there's a question that Malaysian government might not. I mean, personally, Malaysians' foreign policy has always been quite neutral in a sense that it supports whichever power that would not be a threat to its own sovereignty. And with Malaysia, China and the US definitely are close allies because China has not posed a threat to Malaysia's sovereignty. The same goes to the US, and cooperation with China and the US is definitely important, especially it does pose a huge economic benefit to Malaysia. So the question is not about whether China should be seen as a threat or not. It's about how to address the big brother above, and not to create more tension between this region and China on the issue related to the South China Sea. So in a way, Malaysia has passed its critical first test, but what is important is the subsequent proof that Malaysia is not just impartial, but able to be a good diplomat to this region and to China, and also to other powers who has interest in this region as well. Another news that I would like to highlight is regarding on the DBS. Apparently, it's the most valuable bank brand in ASEAN. For those who are not sure what is DBS Bank is actually a bank that has been named the most valuable bank in ASEAN for the second consecutive year. Kudos and congratulations. It is actually done by a study by consultancy Brand Finance. And found out that the bank has not only increased its brand value over the years by 10% to 4.4 billion US dollar, but also has doubled it over the past 5 years. DBS has also been the most valuable bank in Singapore every year since the study began 7 years ago. So what the study also now is targeting is the bank finance banking 500, as it is known, is an annual study conducted by brand valuation consultancy Brand Finance and published in the Banker magazine. The study also found that DBS customers appear to be more emotionally engaged and extremely loyal to the bank. That's quite interesting. So I guess DBS is doing the right thing in terms of marketing and communication strategy as well as improving customers' satisfaction. And also the bank's representative said that they remain committed to making bank more intuitive and interactive across physical and digital touch points and further improving the customer's experience rather than making it as mere a dollar and cents savings account or just an avenue for dollars and cents. As you all know, just to a bit of update, DBS Bank is a bank incorporated in Singapore and previously known as the Development Bank of Singapore Limited before its present name changed in 2013. Its current CEO is Piyush Gupta, and seems like it's doing very, very well with its current standpoint. Another news to highlight is regarding on which comparison and trade flows between China, ASEAN, and India. This is according to the China briefing based on the business intelligence from Tenzin Shira and Associates. From what it seems that the cost of manufacturing in China continue to rise, the search for ever more competitive products become increasingly important. While the China situation has an upside, the creation of a 600 million strong middle-class consumer base by 2020, the reality that is a combination of rising wages, welfare and operational costs is encouraging the ASEAN supply chain to move, and this would be namely China, ASEAN and India. However, there are some important qualities about this shifting dynamic. With high productivity levels, China has largely proved itself as a capable manufacturer for global supply. The country has a relatively well-developed infrastructure, certainly along its coastlines, where moving towards inland manufacture. Although these do begin to deteriorate when moving towards inland and manufacturers, the coastal region remain a hotbed for global production and supply. And that's true. I mean, if you look at the big picture of China, the whole map, you can see a line that can be drawn across, sideways across half of China. The inland part are usually underdeveloped, quite communistic in its approach and its policy conduct. But when it comes to the coastal line side of China, it seems to be much more capitalistic and focusing more on production, supply, manufacturing, and other economic activity which has very much developed China to the way it is right now. And the manner in which they have matched low wages and taxes with well-constructed supply chain infrastructure has served both the global consumer and foreign manufacturers in China for the past 2 decades. That's where most of the goods that you have right now are most probably made in China. So what does the impact of rising wages now mean to China? Focus on purchasing managers needs to start looking elsewhere. This then become a strategic issue, meaning that the following question needs to be answered in terms of very much related to the supply chain, trade agreement, and also the standards, the productivity standards that China needs to address itself. The same goes with other countries in ASEAN and India. So with the ASEAN economic development, it will definitely raise the standards even higher, and how these countries would be able to surpass expectation, that is left to be seen. That is all for today regarding on our ASEAN Daily. Catch us up tomorrow again, same time at 8 o'clock on your mobile. You can go to TuneIn app and search for Durian ASEAN, or you can listen to us on online at durianasean.com. And of course, you can always engage with us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. We'll always be there to answer your question, to engage with you, to know more about Southeast Asia if you have any question to ask us. Thank you, and we will continue with the Durian Hit, which will feature someone from Southeast Asia to discuss about ASEAN and also the future of youth of ASEAN.